Before that, we got deployed and we were at Fort Lewis, Washington. They said, you will see chemical agents. They said, the type of chemical agents we're going to experience is going to affect us. And that was probably the first time when I asked myself, is it going to end like this? That man is a great man, a man of honor, and strong family man, and he's also the mayor of our city, Mr. Osby Davis. Thank you.
I didn't want to go into the Army. I didn't want to be a part of a war, and I was scared about it. And eventually, I learned enough about the mechanical end of a helicopter, how to be a crew chief, that I got to do that job. So right after Straw Hat Pizza was sold, I got a phone call one day at the office, and it was Carl Karcher.
Wow.
Carl calls up and he goes, hey, young man, I hear you're on the bench.
Cliff reminds me of a veteran who it seemed as though that he has a lot of support from his wife, his community, family, and was able to kind of reintegrate back with their help and support. And I'm sure he did it through, baby steps. I'm sure it didn't happen all at once.
I think similar to our program, we take a very strength-based approach, and both of them have many strengths. Clifford just seems like he has this charisma and resilience, and I don't want to mistake that as him going through struggles though, because he did. However, he was able to use his coping skills and what I call grit to really parlay his skills into a career. Even though it started as a hobby, he was able to translate that into marketable job skills that would allow him to be successful.
Andy was a different, he seemed as though he's very similar to a lot of the veterans that we see. He seemed as though that he took the negative in his life and made it into a positive.
And being able to gain those coping skills and most importantly, build a relationship with others. You mentioned Carl's Jr. and kind of falling into different relationships, but being able to use those relationships and really figure out how you can be positive in someone else's life, not only yourself, but give back to others, is what we stand for. How can you integrate back into the community to the point where you're productive in your work, but productive in all areas of your life?
And truly, therein lies the question. Today we meet two veterans, Cliff and Andy, from two different eras, but with two very similar results. Cliff, an Afghanistan veteran who left the battlefield to launch a successful hat store, and Andy, a Vietnam veteran who now stands as president and CEO of United Way San Joaquin County in California. We cover that and a whole lot more today on Ace in the Hole.
My ace in the hole, here comes. When all else fails, I still got me.
For decades, U.S. service members have left the battlefield only to discover no real prospects for work back home. Today's veteran is changing all that. The skill set is better than ever, and we need this talent and leadership right here on American soil.
Welcome back, baby. I told you you'd make it back. Hi, everybody. I'm Ace Waters. I'm the old drill sergeant that brings the boys back home. How do I do that? I teach them everything they need to know before they leave. Lesson number one. Always keep an ace in the hole. Está mucho dinero.
The type of chemical agents we're going to experience is going to affect us. And so I prayed every night not to experience that.
That's what touched me more about him, that the fact that he took God with him and shared him with the other people.
To get that on you or in you is a scary thing, and I just remember him saying gas, and we have chemical agents in the area, and me trying to find my gear and put on my stuff. And at that time, I could have slept with it on for a week, because I didn't want none of that on me, Wow. And that was probably the first time when I asked myself, is it gonna end like this? I've never seen a tank parked on the side of the road. So it's definitely, I knew I wasn't at home anymore. As 4th of July, the evening rolled around, we start hearing firing coming in. We're laying in bed just relaxing, hot, and all of a sudden I noticed what they call tracer rounds flying over our heads. And then all of a sudden I noticed the sound of the rounds hitting some Connexes, and as they hit the Connexes, I can see the rounds coming through our tent area, and we were taking on quite a bit of fire.
Anybody get hurt?
Not that I know of. A lot of people came close, because like I said, I believe if I would have been sitting up in the bed, I would have got hit.
How long you still were there?
15 months. Out of the 16 people out of Vallejo that may have went over there with us, there was a couple that we did a bond and we said we were gonna make it back. We didn't lose anyone. But the reality is when you get there and things start happening, and you can shake hands all you want to. When those rounds come in, I can't describe that feeling. We got bombed approximately at least 3 to 4 times a week. And I can remember one of my soldiers coming, he was at a different location, and he was in a armament battalion, and he came in and he said, "Sergeant Dawson, you know, I came from an armament battalion, you don't have to explain to me anything." And I said, "I want to explain to you one thing. When you're in an armored battalion, you prepare for your rounds going out. You never prepare for them coming in." And he said, "You know, I'm a man, I understand how, you know, these things." I said, "Well, I want you to understand one thing. When the rounds start going off, you need to be in the bunker, and I need to account for you." And that night, the rounds went off. He was the first one in the bunker. And I counted, he said, "You're right, Sergeant Dawson. I did not experience anything like this." You don't worry about the gunshots like you worry about those mortar rounds. A mortar round is a rocket launched missile that they don't have very much control of. We do, they don't.
Now, I understand, man, for a while, man, when they say National Guard, they think National Guard is like, you know, part-time service or something like that, you know. But yet they still serve their country in the capacity of wartime, too.
What most people don't know, National Guards are one of the first to go into war. And they stay the longest. And they're committed to do multiple things. Where the other armed forces, they may have one field that they have to stay in, and they have to stay in their lanes. But the National Guard is required to go outside of their lanes and do whatever it is, because we're used to society more than the regular Army or the Air Force or the Marines or whatever other case may be. So we might go there and build a house or build bathrooms or do whatever, and be required to do your job, because we have a lot of other skills, and we're more than willing to go outside of what we've been trained to do. We have state disasters, but our country obviously comes first. And that's just the way it is. We worked under many battalions while I was over there, and as they came, we had to transition into another battalion. And the regular Army, they don't do that. They just, when they leave, they leave. We're gone. They stayed in buildings and they stayed in different things, but we stayed in tents and survived and made it happen. So I'm real proud to be a National Guardsman. I think the best thing you could do is surround yourself around your family, the people that you miss so much. Get some spiritual backing behind you. The first 4 months when I got back, I went fishing every day and hung out with my dad and my kids and my wife and just relaxed. Believe it or not, I was a young man at one time, and I used to box. And this man kind of took me under his wing, and he showed me some things, and he said, "You'll never be a boxer. You need to pick up another sport." That man is a great man, a man of honor, a man of belief, strong Christian man, strong family man, and he's also the mayor of our city, Mr. Osby Davis. Thank you.
More than 220,000 women have served in Iraq and Afghanistan. We fully support women's rights, and yet, as men, we still have the need to protect our women. Of those who serve, many left dreams behind, Of those who returned, it was time to fulfill those dreams.
With Andy Prokop here, President and CEO of United Way. From door gunner to that, how in the world does anyone manage to work their way from Vietnam door gunner, and you'll have to explain what that means to people later, exactly, to CEO of United Way, San Joaquin County?
If you believe in a purpose-driven life like I do, that was an experience that was vital and important for me to know and learn so that I could help people today, especially.
What ran through your mind when you received your draft orders?
Real mixed emotions. In fact, I had taken the draft deferment test. In those days, if you were in college and you took what was called a draft deferment test, you would be excused from the draft and you could complete college. So in May, I took the draft deferment test. 2 weeks later, I received my draft notice. I must have given all the answers they were looking to hear. But I didn't want to go into the Army. I didn't want to be a part of a war, and I was scared about it. And I went. I accepted the fact that I had to go, and I did go. And looking back, I'm glad I did go. It shaped me, it grew me up, it allowed me a chance to experience positive and negatives in life that I would have not had experienced any other way.
You start your Army career repairing Hueys in the Vietnam jungle. I don't know if we can truly appreciate what that must mean, but can you sort of paint a picture of that?
I was going to be selected as an infantry person and didn't want to be infantry. So they offered you a chance to re-up, add an extra year of military, and you could choose the job you'd like to do. And in those days, the helicopter was just being talked about as a big new component of this Vietnam era battle. And I thought, well, geez, I must like to fly. I probably would like to fly. Why don't I try something like that? So my father happened to have been a mechanic, and I believe I had his genes in me. And one of the things they offered me was to be an airframe mechanic and go learn how to repair helicopters that would be damaged in the Vietnam War. So I said, okay. Went through the advanced training of helicopter airframe repair. Did very well. I would end up in Vietnam in just a few weeks. And little did I know when I was there, I would be patching holes and fixing frames that had been shot up or blown up by the enemy. And as I watched these helicopters take off and land, and I met the guys who were in them, I said, you know what, I don't like staying here on the ground. I want to be a part of that. So I had a great company commander. He liked me, he thought I was a responsible person. He said, well, why don't you go ride along with them once in a while? Why don't you see if it's what you're cut out to do, and I'll help you get into a different job. So I did. I rode along and experienced what happens on a flight in combat, and what door gunners did, what mechanics did, the crew chiefs, what pilots did. And I grew to respect those people a great deal, grew to admire what they did, and couldn't wait to be a part of it. So after I would fly along, I would go back to work and repair the helicopters. And eventually, I learned enough about the mechanical end of a helicopter, how to be a crew chief, that I got to do that job. I switched from being an airframe repairman to becoming the crew chief. Then I got to learn how to be the door gunner. And I took to it like a duck to water. I was a great marksman. I was expert at anything I ever fired. So me and an M60 machine gun were tight and close, and I was good with it. And I loved to fly, and I loved feeling that my job was to protect everyone associated with that flight. My fellow crew chief, my pilots, and anybody we were given a ride to or from the combat zones. So it was, to me, an incredible experience, one I loved. If you could say flying was beautiful, I thought it was beautiful. Yes, we went in and out of difficult situations. Yes, we were terrified at sometimes, but I always felt I had the better job of the person I was dropping off and leaving in the jungle, or mine. I thought my job was a little bit better because I didn't have to stay.
So given their 5-minute life expectancy, you never feared not coming home?
I think the young Andy was the kind of Andy that felt he could not do anything stupid. He could survive this. He understood the fact that 3 out of 4 guys in the job were either injured or killed, and he saw some of that happen, witnessed that happen to his friends. But I said, I'm not going to not do this job because of those risks. I'm going to do those jobs because of this risk and because of those people I surround myself that are willing to do it as well. I want to be a part of it, and I want to do it in a responsible way, and I want to protect those pilots at all costs. And I did it. Yeah.
Were there any like close challenges you almost just didn't make it out, or?
Yes. The most difficult times were when you were sitting there as they were getting off the helicopter, or when they were reloading back onto, because that's when you were most vulnerable. Anybody knows what a door gunner did, we were sitting right out there open, ready to go. We have a full field of vision, so did the enemy. They could see us very well, and they didn't like what we were doing as we were shooting into their areas, trying to stop their fire. We would take fire. Our helicopters usually got shot in the tail boom as we were leaving. Sometimes in the rotor blades. I was very, very fortunate. We took a few hits, but none hit me, and I'm grateful for that. We crashed twice, once on takeoff, engine failure. Once we came down too hard and we bent the skids, and one time we got shot in the hydraulic line and we lost power and had to come down into the Mekong Delta. And that was probably the most terrifying experience I ever had, trying to repair the hydraulic line with duct tape and any way we could while I'm more than waist deep in the water. There were snakes and water moccasins everywhere in the water, plus enemy fire. So I couldn't wait to get that repaired. And today, as a mechanic, as a person that still likes to do mechanical things, there's not a nut I can't crack. There's not a job I can't do, because I'm thinking, difference between this and Vietnam is nobody's shooting at me.
Wow. If you could take us back, what were some of the key points to your successful transitioning back into civilian life after the battlefield?
I think it was my positive attitude. I came back from Vietnam with confidence in myself, and honest to gosh, for the rest of my life, up including today, I have approached anything in life with a positive attitude. And I just know that if you live your life in a positive way, good things can happen. I would go look for something to keep me busy. I would find something in life that says, this is what I'm meant to do. This is my purpose. While I may not be able to use skill sets that I have used in the past few months or years, understanding that when I came home from Vietnam as an accomplished qualified door gunner, there wasn't a great deal of demand for that back here in America. And so what was my other skill sets? I liked people. I liked working hard. I was used to working hard. I wasn't afraid to work long hours, and I wasn't afraid to tackle difficult situations. I went from a dough roller to assistant manager to district manager to regional vice president to regional operations director of all of Southern California, Arizona, Nevada. 16 years later, I'm running Arizona, Nevada, California Straw Hat Pizzas, 150 of them. And I'm doing a great job, and people are saying, geez, I can't believe you can be so darn nice and get so much done. How do you get people to work for you? I said, because I'm so darn nice. And I said, I'm not naive. I understand people can do bad things, and I watch for that, and so that I don't get burned and I don't get taken advantage of. Carl Karcher, the founder of Carl's Jr.'s, knew of me. He liked me. I was the regional vice president of operations over a restaurant in Santa Ana where Carl's niece was the manager. Carl had happened to have come in there a couple of times. I happened to have met him, and we had great conversations. So right after Straw Hat Pizza was sold, I got a phone call one day at the office, and it was Carl Karcher. Wow. Carl calls up and he goes, hey, young man, I hear you're on the bench. And I go, how'd you know that? He goes, well, my niece mentioned that Straw Hat's being sold, and he says, I can use a person like you in my Carl's Jr. restaurants. He says, what are you thinking about doing next? I said, I'm wide open to our conversation. He says, well, why don't you drive 4 miles from your office where you are now to Anaheim and let's talk. That night we met. That night, and just a few minutes after our conversation, I said, Carl, I'd love to work for you. He started me out as a vice president of operations of Orange County, and 14 years later, he allowed me to become a franchisee.
Whoa. Okay. Let me back up a little bit, because this is so exciting to hear this from one person that can do all this despite the background. Now,
That brings me to PTS. We dropped the D because a lot of veterans don't want to associate with this disorder factor of it. How do you deal with that? How did you deal with that? And what do you recommend to guys today?
There are times I still remember vividly things that I did in Vietnam and things I had to do that I wouldn't want to do, things I probably couldn't do today. I did, and I did because that was my job. And I understand when New Year's Eve comes, people want to celebrate. People like to go out and make noise and be joyful. That doesn't work for me. It's a terrible evening for me, and I really just can't wait for that night to be over. And even now as I'm talking, I can see things in my mind I don't want to talk about, don't want to think about. So I put it back there, and I say, you know, that's part of me, part of what I've done, but it is not going to control what I do today. I'm going to get over it fast. I'm going to get right back to being positive, and I'm going to go out and try to influence people in a positive way.
We are the National Center for PTSD here in Menlo Park. We have an inpatient program for trauma for men, for women. We have outpatient groups. We have mental health groups that are taking place in all sorts of things to address the PTSD issues, whether that be in fitness or whether that be in art therapy, expressing themselves through art, meditation. I think there are even the workouts and trying to get walking and exercise and the dog therapy of having dogs. We found that a companion sometimes may not be a human being, but they can relate to a dog.
Sandra.
Sandra, nice to meet you.
I'm the instructor for Paws for Purple Hearts. There's two programs here. This is Leaf.
A dog being beside them and being their buddy. And we have a huge program here now through the Rec Therapy program that trains dogs with veterans so that they can have a buddy and that they have somebody that they can trust. And it's a phenomenal program, and it's something that everybody adores watching because it's the puppies and they grow up with the veteran and then they get trained with the veteran and the veteran gets to take them home.
Who doesn't love puppies? We really have to think about how we can guide these veterans in translating their past employment history and military experience into marketable skills. That's what we do every single day.
We want to do a job club with it, and a bunch of stuff that we want to kind of use it for. So since it's so awesome.
Jesse probably is the most popular person in our program. He pretty much takes anyone who walks in. So they're not necessarily enrolled in our program, but are interested in finding work.
Nice.
And so he helps them and has gotten so many veterans jobs. And if Andy walked through, yes, it might be easier to get a job for him, but we see a gamut of veterans from the Vietnam era that perhaps need a little bit more guidance navigating their psychosocial issues. And if you think about it, for anybody, you can't be isolated and not have interpersonal relationships. And so we really have to address the whole picture when we're looking at veterans, and not just Andy or Clifford, because they each had different skills and different barriers to overcome, but with the same result. So we have to kind of go in different directions in order to tailor our treatment and assistance to these veterans.
We really take an individualized approach. We don't just gamut everybody into one kind of group or one section, or say, oh, well, you have depression, so you have to go into this group, or you have to. Everything that we do is individualized according to what the veteran needs. And we pride ourselves on that. And a lot of veterans in the VA don't realize that this type of vocational rehabilitation is something that they can access as a service. We've been really pleased that we've been able to do as well as we have.
We actually seem to be fighting the good fight against PTSD. What's the outlook long term, despite challenging odds?
There is ongoing research and people who are dedicating their lives to address this problem with the PTSD issues that these veterans face. And I think that I'm hopeful. I may not be here at the VA in 20 years, But I am hopeful that people will really address more of the PTSD issues and the psychosocial functioning of a lot of the veterans to take care of some of those things before they move into a lot of the things that they may have to deal with later on.
There's a lot of psychosocial issues that veterans are facing, and we, in the media it comes to mind PTSD. But if you look at the gamut of psychological disorders that veterans are facing, such as depressive disorders, maybe psychosis, and homelessness, extensive legal backgrounds. We've had veterans that have been in prison for 20 years. And how do you overcome that and find employment is quite a challenge. Many veterans are divorced, separated from their families. The huge thing that I work with that I never thought I'd work with are substance use disorders. I fell into it and I fell in love with that area. It keeps work exciting, to say the least. And the veterans just have so much resilience. They've been knocked down so many times and gotten back up. And so, their mental health issues are complicated by substance use disorders and limited social support. Many people have burned bridges with their families. And in order to kind of feel whole again, reconnection is very important.
The coaching that we do to make sure that they are successful, to push them a little bit, to listen, of course, have good listening skills, but to be able to be a coach instead of saying, you have to do this, you have to do that, but take some feedback, take a little bit of coaching, and sometimes if they're coachable, they're much more successful.
And they just may need one person to start trusting. And we go above and beyond our call of duty just so that we can build these therapeutic relationships. We work a little bit differently. We have more of a drop-in approach. And so I have veterans coming back that I worked with 2 years ago who continue to check in with me just because I'm their safe person or their safe base. During the holidays, they give me a call to let me know that they're okay. And that's heartwarming to me, but also just speaks to what one therapeutic alliance can do for someone's functioning.
Your advice to those just returning?
Slowly acclimating to your environment is very, very important. Many of our veterans are coming back from these structured regimens. And so when you come back, when do you eat dinner? When do you sleep? When do you socialize? And even when they get into work, one of the big things that we talk to them about is have some fun. And they say, I don't have time, I have to go to work. And I said, Dr. Johnson and I are great role models. We work hard and play harder. So you have to make time for fun. But the other big thing is social connection. Again, choose one or two people that you may trust or feel comfortable with, and then slowly expand your network. And this is not only important for veterans, but for human beings. We need that social connection to feel a part of.
I think the first thing I would say is baby steps. To come back and to get reunited with family and friends and everything at once could be really overwhelming. But to come back and maybe reunite with your family and take a baby step of being able to, be able to talk with a couple of friends or to be able to do certain types of things that feel comfortable within those first few weeks to a month when you get back, and not to take on everything all at once. You don't need to be, coming back from an area of warfare into something that is very, very unlike warfare and try and adapt to it immediately.
Recognize that veterans are the expert in their own story. And how can I be a part of that? I've been fortunate to be a part of many veteran stories, but bringing my clinical realm intersecting with their own experiences is really important, and not feeling like I'm the expert sitting on this pedestal, but that I'm just here to help them help themselves.
We're really listening, and we're a listening partner, and we learn from you.
Dr. Johnson, thank you so much for such a rewarding program. Dr. Wong, for your work within this program. It's just amazing that the two of you are here in the first place. The work you do is just incredible, and we so commend you, and we're so grateful to have your input for what we're doing.
Thank you for having us.
The pleasure is ours. That's it from Palo Alto. We'll see you next time on Ace in the Hole. Next on Ace in the Hole.
Meet June Maltz.
From explosions to decayed bodies, decapitations, took care of my weapon. That was like my best friend. I took a razor to my wrist, but she knows now nothing is ever that bad. Now me and my kids, we hug and we kiss.
Today, she works in program support for the VA Chaplain Service, providing spiritual and pastoral care for staff, veterans, and their families.